Today, we're gonna talk about deadlifting. That's right, we're gonna talk through the steps in which you can make sure that you get your deadlift right and ultimately you don't fucking injure yourself, because that's all everyone seems to talk about, is how much deadlifting can injure you. But if you get it right, I promise you, you will not. I'm also gonna talk through as well the 3 common things that most people butcher and why, and why people get them wrong, and how if you just get these other things right, again, you can sort it all out. So, before I move into it, I just want to say, if you like this video, then fucking like it. Also, don't be a creep. If you actually like this space, you like my videos, make sure you subscribe, and it'd be great to see you on the next one. All right, so yeah, let's get to it and let's talk about some deadlifting. Now, before I even get on to talking about deadlifting and actually lifting, there's something I really want to speak about, because so many people simply forget the small things. It's half the reason why most people butcher their deadlift. That simple thing is our footwear. And if you're like me, like most people, then you wear these fucking funky looking trainers. I mean, they've got a massive fucking heel. I mean, that literally is an extra 2 inches. I'm about 6'4" with these on. The point is, you don't want to be any taller with deadlifting. You don't want to be pushing through a spongy soft shoe sole, because you're going to lose power. And it's just not as stable as you want to be. And these little things, when you lift, make a massive difference. So what you need to do is make sure you take them off and simply chuck them away. Now, just because I've taken my shoes off this time doesn't mean you don't have to wear any shoes at all. I always train in Vans, or I've even got some Vivo Barefoots, which are like them really wide, ugly looking shoes. But honestly, when you wear them and train in them, you're gonna be like, this feels amazing. The point is, they need to be flat. They do not want to be making you taller, and they need to have a nice firm sole. As I said, make sure you get it right. Now, we are actually ready to actually perform a deadlift. So let's move on to the next step. And the first one is, of course, our stance. So many people believe because they can squat that then they can therefore deadlift. And unfortunately, they are not the same thing. When it comes to our deadlift stance, there are a few little cues that we can sort of figure out what works for us. 9 times out of 10, it's always gonna want to be around sort of hip width. But if you want to be fancy and do some of the cues that some of the coaches tell you, they'll simply say to you, jump as high as you can, because you find when you actually want to jump, you very much actually get yourself in a deadlift position. You might want to jump up and go, right, that's where my feet are. And then once you're in that position there, you then simply walk into that position under the bar. Now, in terms of where you want the bar to be, do you want it to be on your shins? Do you want it to be on your toes? No. You want it to be hovering where your shoelaces would be, somewhere in the middle, I think towards the middle of the foot. That is going to be your perfect position, just because it's going to make sure that when we actually get into our proper deadlift position, the bar is going to be somewhat near our shins. This then moves us on into our first position to get into the deadlift. Now, I like to always start it from the top. For beginners or people who struggle with them lifts, it's hard to just do what a lot of people do and get into that position. And when you get more mobile and you get used to the deadlift, that'll be easy. But I would always start by just focusing on pushing your bum to the back of the room. And if you don't feel your hamstrings in this position, you are doing it wrong. Simple as that. Now, once you're then in this position, this is then we're going to focus on the lowering phase and how to actually get towards the bar. Because once you push your bum back so far, eventually you're going to fall back, right? And you're not going to feel like I can go back any further. So how do I actually get my hands then down to the bar? Do I bring my knees forward? And the answer is no. You simply want to focus on driving the knees out. And this is a bit of magic for a lot of people. They're like, oh my God, I didn't know I could do that. But you can. And that simply is what you want to do. Drive your knees out, and then you'll find that you'll be able to lower to the bar quite nicely. But you'll also be working your hips well, so you probably feel your glutes a little bit more than probably what you did before. Now, in terms of then the next step, grip, is you want to be in a place where I like to say you've got sort of your thumb length outside of your shins, okay? Because if you go too tight, you're sort of impinging where your knees can go, you're going to feel a bit trapped, and you're not really going to get or feel comfortable in the position you're at. So being thumb length outside of your shins tends to be a pitch perfect place to then get in that position. So once we've then nailed getting into that position, now we've got to think about how we're going to get our body ready to lift. And this is where a lot of people butcher their deadlift. So we just want to make sure that this is right. And I want you to look at it and think about it almost like a shotgun, okay? You load, and then you fire. And that's exactly how we're going to think about the deadlift. So once you've got that position again, bum to the back of the room, drive the knees slightly out, grip in that nice position, you're going to then think about looking to what we call actually depress the scapula. Pull them shoulder blades down, depressing them shoulders, feeling like you're bending that bar, yeah? bend it, super easy. Feeling like you're trying to squeeze your hand in your armpits. What this does is engage our lats, and it means that we're no longer massively pulling our shoulders out of our joints. They're locked in place. We're using them bigger muscles in our back, and it also means we're just going to be more secure through our upper body, meaning our lower body can actually do the job we want it to do. Because a lot of people get a lot of movement with their shoulders when they lift, and then that's why they feel a lot through their back and their legs stop actually doing the job or the load that they should be. The next part is simply breathing, which is just, and by the way, not sucking in, like that, no, push your stomach out. That's why bouts help them, help keep that tight position, because they simply compress your abdomen. You want to push out as much as possible. So simply get in that position, hold the brace, okay, big breath. And then the final step is simply about pushing the floor away from you. So many people pull their arms, and again, I've just told you about the brace. I don't want you to feel like you're doing a lot of movement upper body. All it should be feeling like is you're bracing and your legs are doing all the pushing for you. And that way you'll be as strong as possible. So push, feel like you're pushing the floor away from you, and you are gonna feel amazing. So well done, you've officially graduated the Don't Be a Dick with Your Deadlift class. And now we're gonna talk about the specific dick moves that most people are doing. So the first one we're gonna talk about is one I like to call premature ejaculation. You see, because what happens with a lot of people when they deadlift is they get in a great position, they're really feeling themselves. And then what happens is, as soon as they lift, they go like this. And their hips shoot really early, and then all of a sudden, they're massively pulling through their back, which is exactly not what we want. What I want to first make clear is the reason why most people do this is, one, it's way too heavy for you. You've tried to lift too much too early, and you simply can't maintain good core position, a good body position. I'd also say it's quite common with a lot of people that simply don't brace properly. They don't really depress the scapula, they don't really get their upper body and that core nice and tight, so therefore you get more movement through there. And the final one that I didn't really mention in my steps, but really is important, is just taking load of the bar. Maybe I've taken this for granted thinking you already knew that. How silly of me. What you've got to make sure before you lift is that you're in that position and you don't just feel relaxed. You've got constant load. You hear that? See that? That's me taking load of the bar. That's just making sure that it's not going to be an absolute shock to the system when all of a sudden you lift it. So make sure you take load, and you should eradicate that problem entirely. Now, the other error a lot of people do, I swear, comes from like our parents' generation of where people just didn't know how to lift heavy objects. Because everyone was always like, back straight, it meant that everyone always thought when they got to lift something heavy, they need to be as upright as possible, and their back needs to be as straight as possible. What they do is, because they're scared of hurting their back, is they then sit back in a really big position. And usually this just causes loads of problems. One, you're completely off balance. Like, how can you lift anything well if you're off balance? It makes no fucking sense. But then you also find that when you go to lift, you're literally gonna fling yourself forwards, and then you're actually gonna start loading your back again more. So the first thing I would always say to these people is make sure that your chest is covering the bar. Think about your center of mass. Think about where your balance is. If nothing is covering that bar straight up, how are you going to lift it? You're completely off balance, you're not going to be able to do it. So always remember, make sure you hip hinging properly, like we talked about, pushing the bum to the back of the room, and your chest is covering the bar. And that way, you should be then in a great position where you feel like your balance is in the middle of your feet, and you can drive straight up. Nailed it. And the final error that most people make is just not feeling it in their hamstrings at all. And the only simple explanation I have for this is by the simple fact that people are just not hip hinging, and they're just not learning the right path from the get-go. And as I like to say, not almost working in reverse like we did at the start. If you get the movement right on the way down, you will absolutely nail it on the way up. And that's what I would always say to people when learning the deadlift. Make sure that you're pushing your bum to the back of the room, and when you then lift, you drive all the way up, and then you try and actually get it right with the weights in your hands all the way to the floor. And that then also leads me off to using different variations, like the RDL. And if anyone doesn't know what an RDL is, it's simply just focusing on the hip hinge and just not going down all the way to the floor. Middle of the shin, drive up and squeeze. But you have to push your bum to the back of the room with an RDL. Otherwise, it does not work and you're always gonna feel it in your back. So if you're not feeling hamstrings, work in reverse, even go back to your RDL, because that means you're gonna get it right. So well done, you've officially learned how not to be a dick with your deadlift, and I'm sure you're gonna absolutely fucking nail it. But if you do want any of them details written down, you know, there is a reason I brought out my form guide. I'll put a link below, so then you can go and check it out. You know, there is a 50% discount off, you know, go grab it. Obviously it doesn't just talk about deadlifting, you've got bench press, squat, overhead press, pull-ups, you know, all the main lifts and all the main movements, you know, just explained, as well as the, you know, common errors that people make, the dick moves, just so you've got a document there, you know how to get it right, and you can really make sure you get them basics down, because so many people just don't, and they wonder why, you know, they fuck up their lifting or they don't make as much progress as they want. As I said at the start, if you liked it, like it, don't be a creep, and I will see you on the next one. And of course, don't be a dick.